Darnella Frazier, her testimony was some of the most moving testimony. The kids, the underage people who testified were really moving. Here's Darnella Frazier, who actually shot that now infamous video, the 8-minute and 46-second video, which we now know was like 9 minutes and 20 seconds. Here she is taking questioning about whether or not George Floyd was offered care.
So as you were observing Mr. Floyd under the knee of Mr. Chauvin, did you ever see Mr. Chauvin do anything to offer care to Mr. Floyd?
No.
Did he ever either let up or get up so that he could breathe?
No.
Did you ever see him try to administer CPR?
No.
Did you see him call anyone else to administer aid to Mr. Floyd?
No.
Katie, we talked yesterday about the sort of most dangerous thing for the defense here is that after there was no pulse and after Chauvin was told there was no pulse, he still stayed on top of George Floyd and continued to constrict his breathing. That testimony, what do you make of what you heard today?
Well, it ties in to what we heard in the opening statement from the prosecution, the idea that a police officer has a duty to protect, but also to show compassion. As you'll recall during the opening statement, by the prosecution, we heard the mission statement of the Minnesota Police Department that includes the idea of having this duty to care for the citizens. But you know what's important from a legal perspective, Joy, is that there's a third-degree murder charge that got reinstated. And that has a lower standard of proof than the second-degree unintentional murder and the second-degree manslaughter charges that Derek Chauvin is facing. To prove the third-degree murder, all the state has to prove is that Derek Chauvin caused the death of George Floyd through an act that is imminently dangerous to others. So what did we hear today? We heard lay people, eyewitnesses saying it was dangerous. He couldn't breathe. He didn't get off of him. He didn't give him help. And then we had firefighter EMT Genevieve Hansen saying, in her professional opinion, it was dangerous. He didn't get off of him. We heard two different people today say that they called the cops on the cops. And George Floyd may not have been able to testify on his behalf because he is gone. But we heard his voice today through the videos, which was eminently powerful. And we also heard it through the voices of those kids that testified, and it was so compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's play Genevieve Hansen, because I thought her testimony was really good, too. She got into a little mix-up with the judge at the end, but she was quite good. And this is Genevieve Hansen testifying today.
Do you think it would make your job fighting the fire harder if someone started yelling at you and telling you that you were doing it wrong?
I'm very confident in the training that I've been given, so I would not be concerned about somebody that was not trained to the extent I have been.
What if they started calling you names?
Like I said, I know my job, and I would be confident in doing my job, and there's nothing anybody could say that would distract me.
Mark, this struck me as one of the weirdest offenses here, that the people standing there were distracting the officers from providing care to Mr. Floyd. They didn't show any. There were 3 officers holding down George Floyd. There was only 1 officer trying to control the scene, Officer Tao. So if they were so concerned about the crowd, why was it 3-1 on Mr. Floyd and not 3-1 on the crowd? Now, that to me didn't make sense. Did it make sense to you?
Didn't make sense to me at all. But it's the defense just throwing everything up against the wall, seeing what sticks. What it did display was that not only didn't the police officers live up to their duty to care for Mr. Floyd, they rejected the offer of assistance by a person who claims to be a professional healthcare person. So they are just tripling down on their negligence in this particular case, and it will really come out later on about their liability in regards to the death of Mr. Floyd. It's clear, as both sides have said, primarily the prosecutors have said, the video speaks for itself.
You know, and Katie, you know, it is very difficult to, I will say again, it is really hard to convict police officers, even when it seems like obvious that what they've done is wrong. We just had a case just this week where officers were acquitted for beating up another officer who was undercover. He was covering and videotaping at a protest, at a Black Lives Matter protest. The other officers beat him to the point where he needed surgery, and they still didn't get convicted. So it's very hard. But from what you saw today, I've never seen a case like this with this much compelling evidence from young people, from a firefighter, a professional. that was so damning. I've never seen anything like it. To you, does this seem like a sort of separate sui generis case against Mr. Chauvin?
Well, listen, we have to strap in for a long ride. This is just day 2. There's going to be a lot more witnesses. And the reason why we heard the defense focus on the crowd collectively is because they could not go after the individual witnesses today. They were minors. They were women. They were breaking down. I mean, you couldn't do that. So what you do is you go after the collective crowd. But remember, in the opening statements for Chauvin's defense, they said, let's not make an emotional decision. Right? Let's not make it an emotional decision. Let's listen to the actual evidence. And what they're going to say is they're going to wait for their day in the sun, which is going to be the medical testimony, the expert testimony from that, and the no excessive use of force. They're going to try to tell the jury, which they've already done, we need you to make a decision based on common sense, logic, and reason. That's the only thing they can do because it is inescapable. The emotional component today was harsh. It was really hard. It was brutal to have to sit through and hear it and listen to it.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.